If you're watching this video, you're probably wondering what the hell happened to dating. Maybe you're 32, maybe you're 38, maybe you just hit 30 and suddenly it feels like everyone forgot the rules. You've got your life together, you've got the career, the apartment, the friends, maybe even the savings account your 22-year-old self could only dream about. You're killing it in every area of your life except this one, and it's driving you absolutely insane. Here's the thing. Dating after 30, it's not just different. It's like playing an entirely different sport with equipment you've never seen before. The men are different, their expectations are different, and honestly, you're different too. But here's where it gets really frustrating. All the dating advice out there is either written for 25-year-olds who are still figuring out their basic life skills, or it's some generic just be yourself garbage that doesn't actually help you understand why perfectly decent conversations are going nowhere. I'm going to be straight with you about something that might sting a little bit. Your independence, that thing you've worked so hard to build, that thing that makes you proud when you look in the mirror, it's actually complicating your dating life in ways you probably haven't even realized yet. And no, I'm not saying you need to pretend to be helpless or dial down your success. What I'm saying is that there's a psychological dance happening in dating after 30 that most women are completely unaware of. The reality is this: dating after 30 as an independent woman means you're dealing with men who are also navigating their own complex relationship with what it means to be needed, wanted, and valued by someone who clearly doesn't need them to survive. You're both trying to figure out what partnership actually looks like when nobody's desperate, nobody's broke, and nobody's willing to settle for less than they deserve. So here's what we're going to cover today, and I want you to really pay attention because this isn't theory. This is the practical psychology of what's actually happening in your dating life right now. We're going to talk about why your brain works differently in relationships now than it did in your 20s, and why that's actually a good thing, even though it feels harder. We're going to dig into the independence trap, that space where your strength becomes a barrier instead of an asset, and how to navigate that without compromising who you are. Then we're going to get into the male psychology piece, because understanding what's going on in their heads is crucial to making better decisions about who deserves your time and energy. And finally, we're going to talk about strategies that actually work when you're dating from a position of strength rather than need. This isn't going to be a pep talk about how amazing you are, and it's not going to be me telling you to just wait for the right person. This is about understanding the game you're actually playing so you can play it better. Because here's the truth. Dating after 30 can be incredibly fulfilling when you know what you're doing. But it can also be a complete waste of your time and emotional energy when you don't. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's go. Section 1. The psychological shift that happens at 30. Listen, there's actual science behind why dating feels completely different now, and it has nothing to do with your biological clock or whatever other garbage people try to tell you. Your brain literally finished developing around age 25. Yeah, you heard that right. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and long-term planning, wasn't even fully online during most of your 20s. So all those questionable dating choices you made, your brain wasn't even done cooking yet. Now that you're 30 plus, you're operating with a fully developed decision-making system, and it's working exactly as it should. This is why you can spot red flags from a mile away now. This is why you're no longer willing to overlook things that used to slide. And this is absolutely why you're not interested in spending 6 months trying to figure out if someone is serious about you or just wasting your time. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is something most women don't realize. This brain development doesn't just make you better at making decisions. It fundamentally changes what you find attractive and what you're willing to tolerate. You're not being pickier because you're older. You're being pickier because you're smarter. Your brain can now accurately assess long-term compatibility in ways it simply couldn't before. The problem is, this creates a massive shift in how you approach relationships. In your 20s, you might have been willing to date someone with potential, someone you could grow with, someone who was figuring it out alongside you. Now, you want someone who's already figured out the basics. You want emotional intelligence, financial stability, clear communication, and genuine intention. These aren't unrealistic standards. These are adult standards for adult relationships. Here's what's really happening psychologically. You've developed what researchers call strategic self-presentation. You're not just reacting to chemistry anymore, you're evaluating compatibility. You're not just asking, do I like this person? But does this person add value to my life? This shift is exactly what should happen as your brain matures, but it makes dating feel way more complex. And then there's the confidence factor, which is where things get really complicated. The confidence you built through your 20s and 30s, through career success, through learning to live alone, through handling your own problems, that confidence is attractive, but it's also intimidating to a lot of men. Not because there's anything wrong with your confidence, but because it forces them to step up their game in ways they might not be prepared for. See, when you were younger and less established, there was more room for someone to feel needed in obvious ways. Now that you can handle your own rent, fix your own problems, and make your own decisions, any man in your life has to bring something more substantial to the table than just basic adult functionality. They have to offer partnership, not rescue. They have to offer enhancement, not necessity. And honestly, a lot of men haven't figured out how to do that yet. This is why you might notice that men your age seem less confident around you than guys did when you were 25. It's not that you've become intimidating, it's that you've become discerning, and discernment requires them to actually bring their A game, instead of just showing up and hoping chemistry will carry the day. Your standards haven't become unrealistic, they've become realistic. But realistic standards, in a world where a lot of people are still operating from an outdated playbook, means you're going to encounter a lot of confusion, resistance, and frankly, men who aren't ready for what you're offering. Section 2, the independence trap. This one is going to make you uncomfortable, but stay with me because this is crucial. Your independence, that beautiful, hard-earned independence that you've built brick by brick, can actually become a barrier to connection if you don't understand how to navigate it properly. And before you start rolling your eyes or getting defensive, I'm not suggesting you pretend to be helpless or dim down your light. What I'm talking about is way more nuanced than that. There's a difference between healthy independence and what I call defensive independence. Healthy independence means you're capable of taking care of yourself, and you choose to be with someone because you want to be, not because you need to be. Defensive independence means you've built such high walls around your self-sufficiency that there's no room for anyone else to contribute meaningfully to your life. And most of us have crossed that line without even realizing it. Think about it this way. When you can handle everything yourself, when you've got your finances sorted, your social life handled, your problems solved, and your decisions made, what exactly are you offering someone space to do in your life? I know that sounds harsh, but this is the psychological reality you're dealing with. Men are wired to feel valued through contribution and purpose. If everything is already handled, where do they fit? This doesn't mean you need to manufacture problems or pretend you can't change a light bulb. What it means is being intentional about creating space for partnership rather than just companionship. Partnership requires interdependence, the ability to be independent but choose to be dependent in certain areas, as it fosters connection and intimacy. Let's talk about what this looks like practically. Maybe you always plan the dates because you're good at it and you like having control over the experience. But by always taking the lead, you're not giving him space to show up for you. Maybe you never ask for help with anything because you pride yourself on handling your own stuff. But never needing anything from someone sends the message that you don't actually need them at all. Here's the psychological piece that most women miss. When you operate from a place of complete self-sufficiency, you're inadvertently communicating that a relationship with you is optional for you, but also that his presence in your life doesn't matter much. Men pick up on this energy, and it makes them feel irrelevant. Not because they want you to be needy, but because they want to feel like they bring something valuable to your life. Now, here's where it gets tricky with financial independence specifically. Money is tied to security, and when you're financially secure, it changes the entire dynamic of dating. You're not looking at men as potential providers, which is good. But you might also not be recognizing that the provider instinct is still very real for a lot of men. They want to feel like they can contribute to your life in meaningful ways. And if money was traditionally one of those ways and now it's off the table, they need other ways to feel valuable to you. This is where emotional independence becomes crucial to understand. You can be emotionally stable and still be emotionally available. You can have your own life and still make room for someone else's input and influence. The goal isn't to need someone for your basic emotional regulation, but it is to want someone for emotional connection, support, and partnership. Here's what defensive independence looks like in dating. You make all the decisions. You solve all the problems. You never ask for opinions or help. You don't share your struggles or vulnerabilities. And you maintain complete control over every aspect of the relationship. You might think this shows strength, but what it actually shows is that you don't trust anyone else to handle things that matter to you. Healthy independence in dating looks different. It means you're secure enough in yourself to let someone else take the lead sometimes. You're confident enough to ask for input on decisions that affect both of you. You're strong enough to share your struggles without falling apart. You're successful enough to celebrate when someone else wants to contribute to your success. The balance you're looking for is being someone who doesn't need rescuing, but who does want partnership. Someone who can handle things alone, but prefers not to. Someone who's whole on their own, but enjoys being part of something bigger. This requires a level of emotional sophistication that many people haven't yet developed, but it's essential for healthy relationships after the age of 30. Section 3. What's actually happening in men's minds? Okay, let's get into the psychology of what's actually going through men's heads when they're dating you, because understanding this is going to save you so much confusion and wasted energy. I'm not asking you to excuse bad behavior or lower your standards. I will never do that. But I am asking you to understand the mental framework they're operating from so you can make better decisions about who's worth your time. First thing you need to understand, men in their 30s and beyond are dealing with their own identity crisis about what it means to be a man in relationships with independent women. They grew up watching their fathers be the primary providers, the fixers, the protectors. That was their model for how to be valuable in a relationship. Now, they're facing women who don't need their money, can fix their own problems, and handle their own protection. So what exactly is their role supposed to be? This creates what psychologists call role confusion, and it manifests in some really specific ways that you've probably experienced but maybe didn't understand. Some men will try to prove their worth by being overly helpful or inserting themselves into situations where you don't actually need help. Others will go the opposite direction and become passive, waiting for you to tell them what you need from them. And some will just avoid dating strong women altogether because they don't know how to navigate the dynamic. Here's what's happening psychologically when a successful man meets a successful woman. His brain is doing rapid calculations about where he fits in your life. If he can't immediately see how he adds value that you can't provide for yourself, he's going to feel uncertain about pursuing you. This isn't about ego, though ego is definitely involved. It's about fundamental human psychology. We all want to feel needed and valued in our relationships. Now, let's talk about the masculine need for purpose in relationships. Men are hardwired to derive satisfaction from solving problems and providing solutions. When you've already solved all your own problems, his brain doesn't know where to direct that energy. This is why you might notice men trying to create problems to solve or getting frustrated when you handle things efficiently without their input. They're not trying to undermine you. They're trying to find their place. Here's where it gets really interesting from a psychological standpoint. The same traits that make you attractive to men, your independence, your success, your confidence, can also trigger their deepest insecurities about their own worth. Because if you don't need them for anything practical, then the only reason to be with them is because you genuinely want them. That's actually more pressure, not less. Think about it. It's easier to feel confident in a relationship when you know the other person needs you for survival, financial security, or basic life management. It's much scarier to be in a relationship where you have to be chosen purely because someone enjoys your company and finds you valuable as a person. That requires them to believe they're genuinely worth choosing, and a lot of men haven't done that internal work yet. This is why you might encounter men who seem intimidated by your success, or who try to diminish your achievements. It's not because they don't want successful women. It's because your success highlights areas where they feel inadequate in comparison. Instead of rising to meet you, they try to bring you down to their level of comfort. But here's what you need to understand about the men who are worth your time. They're the ones who see your independence as attractive rather than threatening. They understand that a partnership with a strong woman means they get to be part of something bigger rather than being responsible for someone smaller. These men have done the psychological work to understand that their value isn't based on your need for them, but on what you create together. The men who struggle with strong women are usually dealing with one of three things. They haven't developed a strong sense of their own identity outside of traditional masculine roles. They're threatened by women who have achieved things they haven't achieved themselves. Or they're still looking for relationships that make them feel important rather than relationships that actually are important. Here's the practical piece you need to know. You can spot the difference early. Men who are comfortable with your strength will ask questions about your work, your goals, and your opinions. They'll be curious rather than competitive. They'll look for ways to support what you're already building, rather than trying to redirect your energy towards supporting what they're building. They'll be attracted to your capability, not intimidated by it. The ones who aren't ready will show you through their actions. They'll minimize your achievements, compete with you unnecessarily, try to be the expert on everything, or make jokes that undermine your competence. They'll want you to need them more than they want to deserve you. And honestly, once you understand this psychological framework, these men become really easy to spot and dismiss early. Section 4. Practical dating strategies that actually work. All right, now that you understand the psychology behind what you're dealing with, let's talk about what actually works when you're dating from a position of strength. This isn't about playing games or manipulating anyone. This is about being strategic with your time and energy so you don't waste months figuring out what could have been clear in weeks. First, you need to get crystal clear on what you're actually looking for, not what you think you should be looking for based on what worked for other people or what society tells you to want. At 30 plus, you don't have the luxury of dating for entertainment or dating to figure out what you want. You need to know what partnership looks like for your actual life, not some theoretical version of your life. Here's what this means practically. Stop focusing on surface-level compatibility and start focusing on psychological and lifestyle compatibility. Can this person handle conflict in a way that makes the relationship stronger rather than more dramatic? Do they have the emotional intelligence to navigate the complexities of two independent people building something together? Are they genuinely excited about your success, or do they just tolerate it? These are the questions that matter now. Now, let's talk about strategic vulnerability, because this is where most independent women get it wrong. You think vulnerability means sharing your deepest traumas or your biggest fears, but that's not strategic. That's just dumping. Strategic vulnerability means sharing things that allow someone to contribute positively to your life and feel valued in the process. Here's how this works. Instead of never asking for help, ask for help with things that aren't crucial but would be nice to have support with. Instead of never showing uncertainty, share decisions you're working through where their input might actually be valuable. Instead of never admitting struggle, mention challenges you're handling where their perspective or encouragement would be meaningful. You're not creating fake needs. You're creating real opportunities for connection. The key is that your vulnerability should invite partnership, not rescue. You're sharing your human experience, not advertising your problems. There's a massive difference between I'm drowning and need someone to save me, and I'm handling this challenging situation and would value your thoughts or support. Let's talk about showing interest without losing your power, because this is where a lot of women either come across as too distant or too eager. The balance you're looking for is consistent, but not constant. You want to show that you're genuinely interested in getting to know them better while making it clear that your life doesn't revolve around their attention. This means responding to their texts in a reasonable time frame, but not dropping everything to have 3-hour phone conversations every night. It means being enthusiastic about plans, but also maintaining your own schedule and priorities. It means asking questions about their life and goals while also sharing your own thoughts and experiences. You're matching their energy and investment, not exceeding it or falling short of it. Here's something crucial about red flags at this age. They're different than they were in your 20s, and you need to adjust your radar accordingly. You're not looking for obvious deal breakers, like addiction or unemployment anymore. You're looking for subtle signs of emotional immaturity, resistance to growth, or inability to handle adult relationships. Watch for men who can't have direct conversations about what they want, who avoid making plans more than a few days out, who don't ask meaningful questions about your life, or who seem more interested in the idea of having a girlfriend than in getting to know you specifically. These aren't dramatic red flags, but they're indicators that someone isn't ready for the kind of relationship you're capable of having. Pay attention to how they handle disagreement or different opinions. Do they get defensive, dismissive, or do they actually engage with your perspective? How do they talk about their past relationships? Are they taking responsibility for their part in what didn't work, or is every ex-girlfriend crazy? How do they treat service workers, their family, their friends? These behaviors will translate directly into how they'll treat you once the initial excitement wears off. Here's the strategy that works best for independent women. Be genuinely interested in their character and compatibility while staying completely unattached to the outcome. This isn't playing hard to get. This is genuinely evaluating whether this person adds value to your life while being open to the possibility that they don't. You're interviewing for a life partner, not just someone to spend Friday nights with. That means you need to ask the real questions. How do they handle stress? What are their actual goals, not just their dreams? How do they treat people who can't do anything for them? What does their relationship with money, family, and personal growth look like? And here's the most important strategy of all. Trust your instincts completely. Your gut feeling about someone is usually right, especially now that your brain is fully developed and you have more life experience to draw from. If something feels off, it probably is. And if you're having to convince yourself that someone is right for you, they're not. If you feel like you're auditioning for their approval, instead of evaluating mutual compatibility, walk away. The goal isn't to find someone perfect. It's to find someone who's genuinely compatible with the life you've built and excited to build more with you. Someone who sees your independence as an asset, your success as attractive, and your standards as reasonable. Those people exist, but you won't find them if you're wasting time on people who aren't ready for what you're offering. Dating after 30 as an independent woman is harder in some ways, and that's not your fault. It's not because you're too picky or too intimidating or because you've missed some imaginary deadline. It's because you're operating at a higher level now, and there are simply fewer people who can meet you there. But here's what I need you to understand. Harder doesn't mean hopeless. And it definitely doesn't mean you should lower your standards or dim your light to make other people more comfortable. What it means is that you need to be more intentional, more strategic, and honestly, more patient with the process. The dating pool at 30 plus is different. Some people are divorced and dealing with co-parenting and custody schedules. Some are set in their ways and resistant to the compromises that come with building something new with someone else. Some are still figuring out basic adult emotional skills that you mastered years ago. This is the reality of the landscape, and accepting it will save you a lot of frustration. You're not going to have the same quantity of options you had in your 20s, but the quality of connections you can build now is so much deeper and more meaningful than anything you were capable of before. You know who you are, what you want, and what you bring to the table. That clarity is incredibly attractive to the right people and completely irrelevant to the wrong ones. Here's what moving forward actually looks like. It means dating with the confidence that comes from knowing you're a catch while staying genuinely curious about whether someone else is worth catching. It means being open to love without being desperate for it. It means trusting that the right partnership will enhance your life rather than complete it, because you're already complete. The men who are intimidated by your success, who can't handle your independence, who want you to need them more than they want to deserve you, those aren't your people. And honestly, recognizing that early saves you both time and energy. You're not trying to convince anyone that you're worth choosing. You're trying to figure out who's worth choosing. This process requires a level of emotional maturity and self-awareness that not everyone has developed yet, and that includes some people your age who should have figured it out by now. That's not your problem to solve. Your job is to stay true to who you are while remaining open to genuine partnership with someone who's done their own work. Dating after 30 means you get to be selective in ways you never could before. You get to prioritize compatibility over chemistry, substance over excitement, and genuine partnership over temporary entertainment. You get to build something real with someone who sees your whole life as an addition to theirs, not a threat to overcome. So stop apologizing for being successful. Stop feeling guilty for having standards, and stop worrying that you've somehow missed your chance. Your chance is right now. With this wisdom, with this clarity, with this version of yourself that knows what she wants and isn't afraid to wait for it. The right person for you isn't going to be intimidated by your independence. They're going to be inspired by it. They're not going to see your success as competition. They're going to see it as evidence that you're someone worth building something amazing with. And when you find that person, everything you've learned about yourself and everything you've built in your life becomes the foundation for something even better. That's what dating after 30 is really about. Not finding someone to complete you, but finding someone worthy of the complete person you've become.